As I was doing my makeup yesterday, I realized that the way that I do makeup and the way that I approach it when I have my naturally fair skin is a lot different than when I have a self-tan on. And then it struck me that I've never really done a video on all my tips for doing makeup on fair skin. And I feel like I have a ton of experience at doing my own makeup, and then also just throughout the years learning sort of what looks best on me. I'm also going to be sharing some other tips, so if you don't have fair skin, you can still get some information out of this video. I'm going to be talking a little bit about color theory as well, how to find the right colors for you. So I think this is going to be a really fun video. If you do find it helpful at any point, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, but we're just going to hop right into the makeup. Got my green tea. I love the color of this. So when I am doing my makeup and I don't have a self-tan on, one of the things that I feel like I have to tackle more than when I do have a self-tan on is discoloration, because when I'm tanning, I do also usually tan my face. So things like redness, dark circles, acne scarring, acne is gonna show up a lot more because when you have fair skin, everything just really shows through if you do have any sort of just really anything going on your face. So we're going to start by color correcting the under eyes. I think one of my favorite tips for fair skin is doing color correcting because you can use less product. You don't have to use such full coverage products when you work on really color correcting what's already there. So for the under eyes, I have two products that I usually use. First is the Honest Beauty Honestly Bright Tinted Eye Cream. This one I don't like as much as the next product I'm going to show you, but this is basically just a tinted eye cream. It has a slight yellowness to it, so it's gonna help brighten up the under eyes and cancel out those dark circles so you can use less concealer. It's also a great prep for concealer. And the other one, which is my personal favorite, is the Pixi Vitamin C Under Eye Brightener. This one's a little bit more peachy toned. I feel like it cancels out the darkness a little bit better. As you can tell, it's a lot darker and you get this sort of round tip applicator. So I just like to squeeze a little bit out. That was actually way too much. But once that's sort of laid down, I just go in with my fingers and then really work it into the skin. And this doesn't do like a ton. It's not gonna cancel out everything, but I feel like it really does just help to start to cancel things out. So we're gonna end up using less concealer later on in this makeup look. You can also use this anywhere else you have darkness. I just feel like the rest of my concerns are sort of redness. That's why I just stick with the under eyes. Now for the rest of the color concerns in my face, my primary concern is redness. You might be different. You might be more concerned with dullness. In that case, you might want to use a different color corrector, but I really enjoyed the NYX color correcting primers. They have this in different shades depending on what you're looking for. I use the green because it neutralizes redness, and I have a lot of redness. Like my whole face in general just leans red, even though my natural skin tone actually isn't very cool. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but this is a very creamy, it's a pretty pigmented color corrector, but you can use this all over your face. Personally, I just like to use this in my cheek area where all of my redness is sort of concentrated. It's also amazing for redness right under your nose or around your mouth. So I'll usually just concentrate it on my cheeks, and whatever's left over I will bring onto my forehead. But I don't have like a ton of redness there, so I'm not gonna go crazy. If you're not as concerned with redness or you want something that's a little bit less pigmented than the NYX product, I do also really like this Vesca Beauty Soft Sun Radiant Skin Primer. They have multiple shades of this. This is a yellow shade. It's a lot sheerer and more subtle than the NYX one. Yellow does also help with redness. It's also going to give you a little bit of radiance. Like you can barely sort of see that on my hand, but it's a really pretty glowy primer. They also have a purple one, and I believe a more peachy one if you have some darkness. Another color correcting product I like to use in my fair skin makeup routine is a color correcting primer. This is the NYX HD Concealer in green. Very similar color to the primer. I only use this on blemishes like this one right here, which just has very large radius of redness at the moment. So hopefully this will help when I'm putting concealer on it later on. That's the only spot I think I'm going to do because this stuff is really pigmented. I don't want it to be too green since we already have that primer on as well. And then with this, I'm just going to use this with my fingers to make sure that it's blended out. I like to sort of really blend out the edges and sort of drag it, but once I'm focusing where it's a lot of redness concentrating, I will really make sure to concentrate the product there. Next, for foundations, I tend to gravitate towards more full coverage when I am fair because I have more discoloration showing through. I don't know, I just feel like when I'm tan, I like a light glowy look, but I actually like matte, more full coverage product when I just am rocking my natural skin tone. So you probably already know this, but one of my favorite foundations are the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop full coverage foundations. These have a matte finish. I don't think this is going to be a formula that everyone loves, but if you like matte finishes, if you like full coverage, this is absolutely beautiful. It is the most long-lasting foundation I've ever tried. Like, seriously, this stuff does not budge. And the reason I wanted to talk about this foundation as well is because of the shade range. I've never found a better match in foundations than I do with the shade range, especially with the more fair shades. I feel like a lot of drugstore brands, higher end brands, their fair shades tend to be either really pink or peachy on me. That's just sort of a problem that I have with finding a foundation tone. So this one specifically from NYX is called Pale, which is pretty much my color match. It's a little bit light, so I mixed in a tiny bit of Nude, which is my self-tan shade. I'm not sure what undertones these are. I believe they're neutral, but they're almost a little bit warmer. So I really love this shade range and this foundation formula, so just a home run for me. So I'm starting with about that much of the pale shade, and then for my nude shade, I'm just adding one pump. Once that's mixed up on the back of my hand, I just like to apply it in my face working sections because this is a fast drying foundation. And I'm just using my Eco Tool sponge. I honestly have no idea what my actual undertone is. Like, I feel like if you go by the vein test, my veins are very blue, but anytime I wear a cool toned, peach toned, or very pink toned foundation, it looks so weird on my skin. That's why I've always gravitated towards more yellow tones or neutral tone foundation. But even neutral tones tend to be a little bit too like orangey on me. I just feel like yellow tones work best, which I feel like doesn't make sense. Like, looking at my veins, like I should be cool toned, but I'm actually not that cool toned. Like, I feel like I might have an olive fair undertone because it just doesn't seem to fit in like that warm category or really the cool tone category. And if you're like me and you're not sure what your undertone is, just play around and see what like looks best on you and what you like on your skin. I gravitate towards the yellow side. I feel like it cancels out redness more and it just seems to match with my natural skin tone. So this was one layer of this foundation, really full coverage, pretty close match to my neck. Maybe it's a little bit light. I don't know. I think it looks really good though. I love that foundation. Again, try it out if you haven't already. It's a drugstore product, so it's not going to break the bank too much. Next, we'll move on to concealer, which is obviously now the part of my face that is sticking out because it's contrasting with the rest of my skin, which is very blanked out at this point. I'll talk a little bit more about contrast and how to use it to your advantage later on in the video, but starting with concealer, I'm just gonna finish concealing this little blemish here with the KOSAS Revealer. This is the shade 01. Thankfully, they expanded the shade range because before they expanded it, the fair shades were very yellow and they didn't really have a light enough one for me. So this one I feel like is a really good match, and I'm gonna use my fingers for this because it is a creamier concealer. I feel like it just really works the best that way. For under eye concealer, I prefer full coverage concealer no matter what. It's just what works for me. I feel like I do have pretty dark circles, so I do enjoy something that's more full coverage. I also like thicker concealers. Thinner, more hydrating concealers usually don't work for my under eyes. They tend to just like crease and really sink into lines. But a concealer I've sort of rediscovered and have been absolutely loving lately, and I think they have good fair shades, is the Tarte Shape Tape. This is the shade Fair. Everyone was obsessed with this back in the day and they've all moved on since to other concealers, but I remember really enjoying this. I decided to give it a go and now it's my new favorite concealer again. It is really thick, it's really full coverage, you don't need a lot of it, which I like, and this is the shade Fair, as I mentioned, which I think is a really nice fair neutral shade. I also think that the e.l.f. Camo Concealer, the original, is a good dupe for this one, but I still like this formula just a little bit better. I feel like it's a little bit less drying than the e.l.f. one. So what I'm doing with this is just putting it in the inner and outer corners, sort of where I had the most darkness, not really in the outer corners, but right on the inside. Then this is going to help lift the face a little bit. And then I'm using my same Eco Tool sponge and I'm going to start blending this out. Another product I highly recommend having on hand if if you have fair skin is some sort of white mixer. In this case, I have the Cover FX Power Play Concealer. I love this formula as well. This is the white shade. This is great if you need to lighten up any concealer. You could also add this to foundation. Sometimes I even use this on its own just to like really brighten things up. It doesn't really look super white because I am so fair. It sort of just acts as a brightener. So I definitely recommend having something similar to this if you feel like it would work for you. So just to show you how I would use this if I really want to brighten up right in those hollows of my eyes, because I feel like my eyes do sink in a little bit. So I really like to add brightness. I just dab a tiny amount just on top of that Tarte concealer. And then once I blend it in, it's just gonna add a lot of brightness to the under eye area. Another dilemma I find with fair skin is finding a translucent powder that's truly translucent that doesn't deepen the under eye area, because that's not what we want. We're looking for something that's really bright. My favorite is the Ilia Soft Focus Finishing Powder. Not only does this look super smooth and airbrushed, it doesn't really have any color to it, so it's not going to deepen that under eye, and it just works beautifully. So I'm going to take that on my Eco Tools setting brush, and I'm just setting the under eyes for now. We're going to use some cream product on the face, so I'm not going to set there yet. So there's the difference. It did not really deepen it too much. It just set it down nicely. Now, if you still feel like you need more coverage under your eyes after using those concealer products, I really enjoyed this Bareminerals powdered concealer. It's the shade Well Rested, which upon first look it might look like it's going to show up a little bit deep and a little bit yellow on me, which it is definitely more yellow shade, but I feel like it's fair enough. The way that I use this is as like a concealer topper after I've already done one layer of powder. I just take a tiny bit of this because I feel like if you use this on its own or on top of a regular concealer, it looks pretty cakey, so I like to do it this way. And then again, just focusing where I have all that darkness, which is right on these inner corners, and it just boosts the coverage even more if you need it. Totally not necessary, but a good tip. Next, I think a really crucial step in fair skin makeup is adding the warmth back to the face, because we spend a lot of time really creating this blank canvas, and now we want to warm it up. We want to add definition, we want to add the contour. So let me quickly talk about cream products, and then I'll move on to some powder recommendations. But if you're looking for a cream contour that's good for fair skin, I really like the Fenty cream. This is the lightest shade Amber, really cool toned, which if you have fair skin, you know is going to be probably the most natural looking, really depending on your undertone. This sometimes pulls just a little bit too cool for me, almost purpley, but if you're even fairer to me, I think this would probably be great for you. If I want a cream product to warm up the face, the Persona bronzer stick in the shade Dune. This is a lot warmer compared to that contour shade, but I think the nice thing about this one is that it shears out really, really well, which is what I look for when I'm doing my makeup and I'm doing it on my fair skin. It's something that's not too pigmented, because cream products can go overboard really quickly. I don't want anything that I'm going to put on my face to be too pigmented, because it's just going to show up even more, because we're basically working on like a plain white canvas. And then my third bronzer option, this one's a bit more sheer and a lot more glowy. This is the Tower 28 Bronzino. They released new shades, so they added a lighter shade to the collection along with some deeper ones. This is a really light bronze cream. This one has shimmer in it, whereas the other two I showed you do not. You can barely see it on my hand there. It is very fair. This is great as a topper, or if you want something very natural looking. I like this cream formula. So I do this tip all the time, not just when I have fair skin, but I think it's especially helpful for fair skin. Instead of applying cream products directly onto your face, I would recommend putting the product on the back of your hand. I do this with bronzer, blush, contour, highlight, whatever I need to put on my face, because with this technique I can get a more even application onto my brush, and I can also control the pigment, so it's not going to be too pigmented when I have it dispersed evenly on the brush. It's going to apply a lot lighter of a layer, whereas if you just were to like slap this on, it could be a little bit difficult to blend out sometimes. So I just picked that up on a Real Techniques contour brush, and I don't particularly like to do sort of circular motions. I like to stipple just as to not disturb the matte foundation underneath. And as you can tell, it's starting off very light, so we're able to build it up. I find that cream products work well over the NYX foundation, as long as I'm not like really cranking it in there. As long as I'm just doing this light stippling motion, I think it takes to cream products well. So this cream is on the warmer side, but in the way that I applied it, I was able to get a lot of control over it, so it looks very diffused and natural already. So I'm doing that same exact thing for the other side of my face, just swirling it in and then stippling it, especially over here when I have this blemish. I'm going to be really careful not to pick up the coverage on that. Whatever's left over on my brush, I'm going to work into my forehead. This is an area I would suggest being really careful with. If you have anything too dark on your forehead, I feel like it's going to be really obvious. So I like to use the remnants of what I used on my cheekbones. Now that we're adding the warmth back to the face, my next step is going to be a contour. I'm going to use the Fenty Beauty cream I just mentioned. This I'm just going to use on my nose. I'm not going to use it on my cheekbones today just because I think I want to just stay with the bronzy look. And like I mentioned, this one could almost be a little bit too cool toned. If I do use this, I do it under foundation so I can diffuse the color a little bit better. I'm just taking a Colourpop E3, which is a slim sort of shader brush. I'm just starting right at my eyebrows actually. I like to start drawing my line. Nose contour I think is usually pretty difficult to figure out for yourself. It just takes some experimentation. Even mine is like a little bit crooked right now, but I just draw lines on the sides of my nose. I don't do anything on the bottom of my nose, and the reason I do this because I do have a relatively like shorter nose. I don't really want to shorten it anymore, but depending on your nose shape, what you want it to look like, that might be for you. You can just like darken the tip here to make it look a little bit more upturned, but my nose is already pretty upturned, so I'm not trying to emphasize that even more, so just stick with this application. And then just taking the side of my Eco Tool sponge, I blend the contour cream in. Now that we're done with cream applications for now, I'm going to set the rest of my face with the Ilia powder. Moving on to powders, there's a lot of bronzers that I've tried. A lot of them don't seem to work for me, so these are my absolute favorites. Starting with a glowy option, the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Bronzer and Nude Bronze Light has a really good tone to it. It's definitely warmer, but it's also very light, so it just adds a really pretty glow to the skin. And then for a matte option, another product from Fenty Beauty. This is their Inda Sun Bronzer, which is again warmer toned, but very fair. This one's a matte finish. This one's super natural looking. This is definitely one of my favorites. And then probably the lightest bronzer I own is this Pure Bronzing Act Matte Bronzer Light, which I'm almost actually hitting pan on. This one's really creamy, smells like chocolate almost. Not very pigmented, which is nice. It's this one right in the middle here. The tone is just beautiful. It's not too cool, it's not too warm. And then if you're looking for a powder contour, this is like a old school YouTube sort of favorite, the NYX Sweet Cheeks Matte Powder in So Taupe. Very cool toned again, kinda can almost look purpley if you use too much of it. But if you're looking for like a true shadow tone for your skin, that one's worth a go. It's a really smooth matte formula. And if you're looking for sort of a blush bronzer hybrid, I actually just ordered the Bareminerals Blonzer product. I was really curious to try that. But another Bareminerals product I think works really nicely as a blush and a bronzer for fair skin is the Blurred Buff Bouncy Blush. This is like a cream powder hybrid. It has more of a rosy tone to it, and it has a little bit of shimmer. So I think this works really nicely as a bronzer that you can bring onto your cheek. Not too pigmented and looks really smooth. The one I'm going to use today is the Hourglass one because I still want a little bit more warmth, but I want to add some shimmer since none of the products that I used so far have any shimmer in them. This bronzer is really blendable. It's really light. The shimmer isn't too chunky, so I don't find that it accentuates texture. I also like to bring this on my nose a little bit. It just sort of works in any situation, I feel like. Next for blush, I always gravitate towards peachy pink shades when I'm fair because I feel like they just look absolutely beautiful and they really brighten the face. I used to never wear blush for some reason. I just felt like I never wanted to add more redness to my face, but I feel like blush makes the biggest difference in adding brightness back to your face. So some of my favorite more peachy toned blushes are the Cover FX. This is the Monochromatic Duo. This one's in Soft Peach. So you have the shimmer shade. You also have a soft matte peach shade. You can mix them, use them on their own. They just blend really beautifully. And then two cream blushes. This is the Tower 28 Magic Hour in this is the Tower 28 Beach Please Blush, cream blush in the shade Rush Hour, which when I first saw this, I thought it was going to be way too bright for my skin. And it is really bright. It's almost like a neon-ish color, but this blush, I feel like does something to my face that no other blushes do. It just adds such a brightness. It's absolutely gorgeous. If you want something a little bit more subdued, the shade Magic Hour is more of a pink tone, has more rosiness to it. If you have more cooler tone skin, I think this one might look a little bit better. Just depends on your preference, but I think I'm gonna use my Tower 28 one today in the Rush Hour shade just to show you how beautiful this is. So same exact technique is going into play here with this cream product, but this time I'm using a Luxie small contouring, and this one I just dab right into the product, and because this is so pigmented and bright, I really diffuse it before putting it on my face, and then I just start to stipple it where I want that blush shade. And I know it looks a little bit crazy right now, but once I have it applied, I go back in with my EcoTool sponge and I use this to soften the edges. We do still have a lot of pigment on there, but this makes it blend into everything seamlessly. And I'm not doing this with the brush because it still has that product on it. This, I'm just using the product that's already been applied to blend it out. Highlight, I think, is also another really difficult product to find light enough or fair enough for fair skin. Some of my favorites that I feel like do not cast dark on me and look really pretty. I actually really love pink tones when I have my fair skin and I'm doing makeup, or you can even do like a purple if you have cooler skin. That will look absolutely beautiful on cool tone skin, really like ethereal looking. But one of my favorites is Bareminerals Zen Highlight. This is a very light pink, light enough I don't feel like it casts dark on me. And then more of a neutral champagne is Honest Beauty Midnight Reflection Luminizing Powder. This one's super finely milled. It's barely a highlight, it's almost just like a glow powder if you like a much softer look. Like you probably can't even see the swatch of it. It's that light but really pretty and not dark. And then another one I have which is too dark to wear as a highlight, but if you have a highlighter that you feel like is too dark, my tip is to use it as a blush topper. This is the Rare Light Luminizer from Rituel de Fille in the shade Phosphine, which again is sort of my go-to pinky mauve shade, which as you can tell is deep, so it casts almost like a blush on my skin. And how I would use this is just to top the blush I have on now using the same technique I used for the cream blush. But today I think I'm going to go with my Bareminerals Zen Highlight. And I like to use a fan brush for a really soft look. These are pretty, it's like a cross between a dramatic highlight and a really, really soft highlight. Just that perfect, not too much but not too little formula. Now that the base is complete, since we did a lot of matte products, I'm gonna set with a more glowy mist. This is the Pixi Glow Mist. This really does add a lot of glow back to the skin if you feel like you're ending up too matte and you really want to melt the powder in. I'm going to go ahead and do my brows off camera with my KOSAS Brow Pop in the shade Hope, and then I will be back and we'll talk about all my tips for eyeshadow, eyeliner, and sort of what tones you can use to emphasize your beauty. My brows are done and I do have a pretty weird eyebrow tip. I think it's only gonna work if you have lighter brows. I just did this randomly one day and it worked, so I thought I would share it. If I have done my brows, I like them to be very light looking and I feel like they're not looking as light as I want them. I take my under eye brush with whatever leftover setting powder I have on it, and I just like to set my brows over brow gel. I know it sounds weird, but I feel like it lightens them up. It also sort of sticks to the hairs and gives them a little bit more definition. Again, this probably will only work if you have lighter brows, but it's worth a shot if you feel like everything's looking a little bit too dark. So that's kind of my tip. I know it's weird, but I like it. Now for eyeshadow, I think probably a really important tip for eyeshadow is finding what works with your undertones and your eye color and what you feel like looks best. For me, I love warm tones, and then also if you have fair skin, I would recommend almost reaching for a less pigmented eyeshadow formula, because when you have such fair skin, colors are gonna show up really strong and they might be harder to blend out. I like to reach for a softer formula that I can really blend in with my skin. One of my favorites is the Ilia Palette, especially the warm nude. This just has everything I need to do a warm, soft look. If you have cool toned skin, or if you prefer a cool toned eye, they also have the Cool palette, which is just as beautiful of a formula. And then my other favorites are Makeup Geek. These are a little bit more pigmented, but I find that they're really blendable. And then I also have some Colourpop shadows, which I enjoy as well. So to start with the transition shade, I really like this light mustard shade as a transition because it's so light. It's barely sort sort of noticeable. Like, I mean, it is noticeable, but it's really soft, so everything is just gonna blend a lot easier. I think that's sort of the key term when I'm doing eye makeup is softness, and I don't really like to do a ton of contrasting colors or anything too dramatic. Next, I'm taking this peachy creamsicle shade in the same Ilia palette on a smaller brush. This is going to be to define my crease a little bit more. So the reason that I do really soft colors is because I have a soft complexion. If you've never sort of heard of that, it basically means that I sort of all blend together. I have very fair skin, and I have light hair, and I have light eyes. So when you look at me sort of as a whole, there's not a lot of contrast happening. So I have to be careful with where I apply contrast. It can be really helpful to add a lot of emphasis, but I be careful with where I apply contrast because it's gonna stick out like a sore thumb. Because nothing else is contrasting, it's gonna appear really strong. Now, if you have fair skin and you have deep hair, contrast might be really beautiful on you. If you do a black liner, say instead of a brown, it could really emphasize basically you as a whole because you're using a contrasting color, and that plays into your hair contrasting with your skin. And yeah, it's just a fun little tip. I don't know if I mentioned what the name for like contrasting features are, but that's called a clear complexion. So if you have light skin, dark hair, if you have dark skin, light hair, any contrast within yourself, on yourself, I don't know how to say this, but you know what I'm saying. That would be a clear complexion. That tip also really works for fashion and clothing. If you feel like you wear a color and it looked really good on you, but you put on a different, say, shade of that same color and it really washes you out, you feel like you don't look good in it, might be because the colors just aren't really meshing well with your complexion and tones. So this shirt, for example, if I wear like a bright orange saturated shirt, it does not look good on me, but this is a pastel orange, so it works with the softness of everything else that's going on. I've noticed that now that I've started buying more pastels, I enjoy a lot more of my clothing. So if you feel like you have a lot of clothes that you don't like, you don't look good in, maybe try switching to pastels or a different shade. Key is to kind of match it to your skin tone. I'm very fair, so I do pastels. If you have a medium skin tone, do a medium saturation. And if you have a clear complexion, meaning you have that contrast, go with more saturated colors, more bold colors, because they emphasize that even more. But if you have medium skin and a soft complexion, you could do like a medium tone but still a soft color. Next, I'm using my little makeshift Makeup Geek Colourpop palette. I'm gonna take this middle shade, which is an orange shade, a little bit more pigmented though. I just started to build that color up a little bit more and brought it on my lower lash line. Another trick I have is try to use your blush as an eyeshadow. This is a Persona blush in the shade Terracotta, which is a really pretty warm sort of brown shade. But I also do this with more pink blushes. I feel like when I have fair skin, I can pull off pink way better than when I have a tan on. I think it just looks super pretty. So depending on the colors that you like, I'm applying this one in my crease now, by the way. So depending on the colors you like, you could try using a blush or a bronzer to get a really soft finish. I'm going to stop at this point because I want the look to be a little bit more natural daytime, which is what I usually do for my makeup. I don't really wear super dramatic makeup a lot, even though it's very fun. Maybe that will have to be a separate video of fair skin, how to do more dramatic makeup. I feel like I have a lot of great tips for that as well. But now that we have all of our warm tones sort of blended in, I'm going to move on to my lid shade. One of the struggles I have is also finding a metallic lid shade that is light enough. I don't really like champagnes that are too deep. I like having a really bright lid. So I actually reach for a highlighter most of the time, either the one I'm using or a different one. This one from Ofra, I've actually started to hit pan on the two shades that I use. This is their Beverly Hills highlighter, this light champagne, and this metallic white. I mix these for my everyday look just with my finger, and then all I do is pat them on my lid. This doesn't really seem that revolutionary, but I feel like this formula, highlight formulas in general, tend to be more finely milled than pan metallic eyeshadow, so it looks really soft and not like you have a lot of glitter on your lid. And now if you feel like you can never find an inner corner shade that's light enough, go with a white shade. I use this Lime Crime palette all the time. I don't use really any of these shades, but this is the Venus Immortalis. This is just a white shade with a little bit of shimmer in it, and I use a small round pencil brush. And this is my inner corner shade because it's the only white eyeshadow I found that actually is like brightening. In fact, when I try to use a more subdued or like mid-tone champagne, it doesn't actually brighten my inner corner. and I do want some brightness. Next for eyeliner, since I do have a soft complexion, I don't like using anything too deep, especially on my waterline. One of my favorite little tricks is to use like a pastel liner. These are the NYX Epic Wear Liner Sticks. You guys know I love this formula. I talk about them all the time. They have a lot of pretty pastel shades, so whatever color you like on your eyes, maybe pick up one of these. And I really lightly apply this on my waterline. All this is gonna do is basically just like add a bit more interest to your eyes. Like it'll be really interesting, like some things there. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's really eye-catching. I feel like it's super pretty and really natural looking, even though it is more of a fun color. This one is the shade, it's like a creamsicle shade called Orange Zest. So as you can tell, that did add a little bit something, but it's not too dramatic. I feel like it just ties all the warm tones together. For a liquid liner, I do really enjoy wearing wing liner and liquid liner. You could do a black liquid liner. For me, I just feel like a brown looks a lot softer, and this is like a deeper brown, but it does come across a lot less harsh than a black liner. But as I mentioned, if you have darker hair and lighter skin, or if you have darker skin and lighter hair, a really contrasting deep liner might be really pretty on you. But for me personally, this is what I stick to. This is the NYX Epic Wear, my favorite eyeliner formula, and it's just called the shade brown. So I'm gonna do a winged liner today. Next, sometimes I like to go in with a brown eyeshadow to smoke it out and make it a little bit more dramatic if I want a deeper brown. So I'm going back in with the Ilia palette and just using this deep brown shade on a liner brush, and I just tap over the liner and soften it. You could also totally do just a shadow liner. I think that's a great tip for fair skin, but I'm just doing this because I want a more dramatic brown liner today. I do just a shadow liner all the time, basically on a daily basis. I have a lot of videos where I do that if you're curious. So I'm back. I went ahead and finished up my eyes. I did some lashes. They're just the Kiss Wispy 01 lashes. I will link them below. Now for lips, I have a lot of lip product recommendations because it's a category I've struggled with finding a tone that works, finding a color that works. So I'm sharing all of my recommendations. Starting with lip liners, I have 4 here. I enjoy all of these formulas and I really love these shades. First is probably my all-time favorite, which is the NYX Lip Pencil in the shade Nude Beige, just their classic lip pencil formula. This is also a really good dupe for Charlotte Tilbury Iconic Nude, but this one's a little bit lighter. I actually like the color more. So starting all the way over here, this is the NYX Nude Beige shade. And then the next one, which is probably the coolest tone liner I own, if you need something cool toned, you like cooler tone lips, or if you want a really taupe sort of overdrawn lip liner look, this is Lime Crime Taupist, which is the next one here. A little bit more purple than the Nude Beige. Nude Beige has a tad more pink warmth to it, but I do still use this one a lot, especially if I'm doing a cooler tone lip. Moving on to the warmer tones, this is the Colourpop Bff Lip Liner. Pretty creamy, not as long lasting as the other ones I find, but a nice warmer color. And then finally, like a pink mauve, is a Kjaer Weis Lip Pencil in Rose. These are super duper creamy if you like that. If you don't find they're extremely long wearing, but that is a super pretty shade. Next for lipsticks, starting in the cooler tone category again, is a Bite Beauty Lip Crayon in the shade Kava. This is a color I never thought I would like and find myself wearing a lot, but I like to use this layered on top of lips if I want to cool them down. It's a really gorgeous muted purple. I feel like on fair skin, these types of shades are just beautiful, especially if you do have cooler tone skin. And then the same formula from Bite Beauty, but a different shade. This one's the shade Amaretto, a bit warmer, still really creamy, has a bit more pink to it. And then my absolute favorite lipstick of all time, I actually ordered a couple more shades of this formula last night from Victoria Beckham Beauty. This is their lipstick in the shade Girl. Super creamy, it's more of a neutral pink. I just find it extremely flattering. I feel like it would work for a lot of different skin tones within the fair skin tone group. So this one's just absolutely beautiful. I just got some lipstick on it. And then the last one is a more pigmented, a bit deeper, but I feel like it's still super flattering. Patrick Tashi's Independent Lip Cream. I wear this one absolutely all the time. It's a really comfortable formula. And then lastly, let's talk about lips. Again, starting with my all-time favorite gloss. Seriously, this shade is so stunning. Next, this is Milky Gloss in the shade Milk and Cookies. This beige brown cooler tone I feel like is just so freaking flattering, and I absolutely love the undertone and formula of that. And then next up we have a cooler tone one, Bite Beauty Guava Puff. this would go really nicely with Kava or really any of the other more warmer tones that we have here. It has some shimmer in it. The NYX Milky Gloss does not. And then we have the Tower 28 Milky Glosses. This is the coconut shade, so it has a lot more pigment to it, but still very sheer. And then last but not least, we have a Pixi Sweet Nectar Gloss, which has more of a peachy tone, if that's the tone that you like. But these are some of my all-time favorite lip products for sure. One of my favorite combinations is the NYX Lip Liner in Nude Beige, the Victoria Beckham Lipstick in Girl, topped with the NYX, this is Milky Gloss. I think I'm actually going to use this combination today. So pretty. And then another combo would be Bite Beauty. Actually, both of these mixed together. I do that a lot, both Amaretto and Kava. And then with the Lime Crime Lip Liner, which is a little bit cooler toned, and then topped with the Bite Beauty Guava Puff if I want a more cool sort of mauve tone lip. But I'm gonna do the combo I first mentioned, so starting with the NYX lip liner, and then I'm gonna go ahead and top that with the Victoria Beckham lipstick in the shade Girl. I just ordered Posh, which is like Victoria Beckham's shade, a more orange ginger nude, and then I ordered a more pink tone. These are so easy. Like, I'm so obsessed with this formula and the shade. I feel like lipsticks are really about finding the tones that you like that work with your skin undertone. This neutral pink I feel like is just perfect. I'm obsessed with it. And then if I want to cool it down even more, the NYX, this is Milky Gloss. This also adds just a bit more like a brown tone. Super pretty. I could have totally gone with a more pinky, peachy nude, especially with this warmer tone eye look. And I feel like my shirt is very peachy today. But I just wanted to show you my everyday nude for my fair skin. So that was actually the whole look. So that was it for today's look and video. I hope you found this helpful, found a ton of tips that you can find useful. This was super fun to do. I have a lot of information. I can't believe I haven't shared about doing makeup on fair skin. I will link everything that I used below if you are curious. Every single thing I recommend I will put down there, and also specify the foundation shades in case you're curious about the shades that I use and you think you might be similar in skin tone to me. But thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on those post notifications so you don't miss my next video. Thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.